Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Zero Hour. Our next guest is a former classical piano prodigy. He is a graduate of New York City's prestigious Columbia University. He has a varied and interesting background. His given name is John Bauman. I gave away my punchline, but he is known to the world as Bowzer from Sha-Na-Na. John Bowzer has been actively campaigning during this election season for Democrats across the country, and he joins us now. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, it's great to be with you, Richard.
It's always good talking with you. I always appreciate getting your perspective on things, and there's a lot I want to talk to you about. I was right that you were a classical piano prodigy, right?
I don't know if I would go so far as prodigy. You know, I went to the Juilliard School preparatory division when I was about 12, from the time I was 12 till about 17. But you know, and I played pretty well, but I really must say that right when you get there, you know, after about a month, your piano teacher has a recital of all of his students. So, you know, I'm sitting there and one kid plays and you go like, wow, that kid's pretty good. And then the next kid plays, you go, oh, that kid's really good. About the fourth kid, you're going like, what am I doing here? You know, and probably none of them ended up being concert artists either. Right. You know, because it's just a very, very, very difficult road, you know, for you've got to be one of the top 10 in the world or 5 in the world in order to make that work. But yeah, I played pretty well, you know, as a kid.
Well, good for you. And I having played in rock and roll bands, I can tell you I am a decent rock and roll keyboard player with my right hand in G, D, and C. Right. That's it.
I'm a terrible rock and roll keyboard player, by the way. And in Sha-Na-Na, I didn't play keyboards because of my classical training. I am trained to hit the middle of the keys. And our actual piano player, Screamin' Scott Simon, his nickname was Mittens because he played like he was wearing mittens. And, you know, much like Jerry Lee Lewis, Screamin' Scott only plays in the cracks. He can't find the middle of the key.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely right. Jerry Lee Lewis from Louisiana. I'm here to play this here piano. Remember that?
Exactly.
No, that's good stuff. And people would say to me, can't you do something with the left hand? And I would say, yes, but not at the same time. That's
another pitfall. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's great to have you on. And you've been out there. I wanted to just get your impressions. You've been using your celebrity notoriety, however you want to describe it, on behalf of good causes for a long time now. And first of all, I guess I want to get your feel of the races you've been helping out there. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask, once in a while you hear people saying things like, well, what do celebrities know? Right. Why should, just because a guy was like famous on TV or something, why should I listen to what he has to say? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that that's unreasonable. It's not an unreasonable point of view. I must say for myself, I, as you and I have discussed, you know, have trained myself reasonably thoroughly. I don't pretend to be as knowledgeable as you are on matters of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. But, you know, I'm not a neophyte either. And, you know, I can impart a reasonable amount of accurate and information to people. And, you know, the celebrity helps you to get a little bit of attention. For instance, as we're speaking, I'm about to have an op-ed run in the Des Moines Register tomorrow. And, you know, that's going to be of great help, I think, to the Braley campaign in Iowa, where Social Security has been such a major part of the fight, and Medicare as well. You know, and I probably couldn't get that op-ed, which I think is a really content-filled op-ed. It's not a frivolous piece by any means. And, you know, I probably couldn't get that in the Des Moines Register if I weren't familiar to people as Bowzer.
Right. And, you know, actually Russell Brand had a good line. I saw an interview with him the other day where he was asked, do you feel it's your duty as a celebrity to speak up? And he said, and get involved. He said, it's my duty as a human being to get involved, which I thought made a very good point.
Agreed.
Do you get people, and I want to talk about the Braley race among others, do you get people surprised that you're so knowledgeable and articulate? Is this just something you have to live with, that they think you're Bowzer, the doo-wop guy?
My own father, who was a lovely man and really meant this as a joke, on viewing the Bowzer character, said, "So I sent you to Columbia University so you could become a moron." So, I'm used to this even from my family, although I do incorporate a piece of classical music, 2 pieces actually of classical music in my presentation, and a story about my mother, who actually the year that my father passed away, came to, obviously the objective, especially for a little kid learning how to play classical piano in New York, the objective is to get to Carnegie Hall. So in 1973, I got to Carnegie Hall. The only thing is I was singing Ram-a-Lama Ding Dong instead of playing Chopin. But sure enough, there's my mother in the audience, the only person standing in the entire audience. I'm up there singing Ram-a-Lama Ding Dong, and she's waving and going, "Jonathan, you made it to Carnegie." She couldn't have cared less whether it was
That's
Chopin
hilarious.
or Ram-a-Lama Ding Dong. Right, and then she went out and started signing autographs, Bowzer's mother. And I incorporate this as a story into my Social Security presentation because really, truly, that was the year my father passed, and my mother was a public school librarian. She paid into the system, and her earned benefits came back to her and made a substantive difference in her life for the rest of it. Her ability to live with dignity and independence was an ability that was unknown to my grandparents, who were completely dependent on their children, and this is what you and I discuss all the time.
Absolutely. And this is an issue, I got to tell you, John, that we're talking with John Bowzer Bauman, formerly of Sha-Na-Na, now on the campaign trail. I got to tell you that I am a perpetual pessimist, but I have been pleasantly surprised. I think we talked about this last time we got together. I am pleasantly surprised and delighted to see the expansion of Social Security, as opposed to the cutting of Social Security, become a topic of discussion in races around the country and in Washington. This, to me, delights me. This is a delightful development. And right now you are in Iowa with the Braley campaign. Is that right?
Not quite yet. I'll be there tomorrow. I've been there. I
can't keep track of you. Yeah, I need one of the.
This has been a real odyssey. We've done 35 endorsements. I've been from Alaska to Maine and Florida to California, and most points between, I have to say. We've been in every difficult race in the country.
And we need that Santa transponder thing that NASA does on Christmas Eve for you. Just where is John Bowman? So when you get there, okay, so we have Braley, who's the Democratic candidate, came out, I think it was last week, for expansion of Social Security, explained why, had a very good one-pager laying it all out. I thought he got it quite right. And do you think, well, I guess I can't really ask you unless you've been to Iowa already, but I was going to ask you, do you think that's changed the dynamic of that race?
Well, I haven't been back there yet, but we know that it's altered the dynamic of the race, from everything we've heard. And it's one of the reasons that I'm going back there. And I wrote this op-ed called, Iowans finally get some plain talk about Social Security and Medicare. In this case, we wish he'd embraced this sooner. We all love the Harkin plan, that's been on the table for a while. And after all, Bruce is running for the Tom Harkin seat. But, this is a really, really great development. And again, puts a lot more daylight, not that there wasn't enough already, between Bruce Braley and Joni Ernst, who has made it very clear, that she supports the Ryan budget, so she's a voucherizer of Medicare. And, a lot of these candidates have tried to sort of obfuscate their privatization of Social Security position. This cycle, it's really a frustrating thing. Most recently, it's been Mitch McConnell, saying privately, bragging about having, supported privatization and during the Bush administration and not being able to get any Democrats to go along with it, and then coming out and saying that he completely denies that he ever said that, which he clearly said, and that, now he's pretending he's not in favor of privatizing Social Security. I mean, this is like crazy stuff. But as you say, what has really come out of the wash is that there's been, during the campaign cycle, a real movement towards expansion of Social Security. Not just, status quo, not just preserve and protect, but let's move forward. And more candidates have embraced this, and more candidates are running on this. And regardless of the outcome of this election cycle, this is a tremendously positive development as far as the conversation that's on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, we'll switch to another race. I think it was Kentucky. I was sitting in the living room the other night. My wife's reading the paper, and she reads to me, and the story, I think it was the Times, the story was something like 2 rock stars hit the campaign trail.
I saw that.
The first one is John Bowzer Bauman, and the second one is Bill Clinton. How'd you like getting top billing to Bill Clinton?
I couldn't believe that. And I've done a lot of events with Bill Clinton over the years, and they're always fun. But I must admit, that's the first time I've ever been mentioned before Bill Clinton. I figured you in the Washington Post the next day about when I went to Kay Hagan a couple of days later, and Hillary had come in that day, and I must admit I was in my proper place, like after Hillary.
Well, it's fun stuff, but I think that was Kentucky. So have you been to Kentucky? Yeah, a couple times, right?
Yeah, well, I went there. I had a fabulous day. First of all, I have to say that I think Alison Lundergan Grimes is really a dynamic candidate. She's one of my 2 favorite candidates, probably, of the whole cycle. The other is Amanda Renteria in California 21, who may turn out to be a 2-cycle project, but she's fabulous. But Allison and I did 5 events in a day on a little bus jaunt called Grannies for Grimes. And among other things, she never gave the same speech twice in the 5 events. She had real command of what she was talking about and was able to move around with it. She got everything in, but like never in the same order, and never, was never dull. I was really impressed with her as a young candidate. And again, they're effectively skewering Mitch McConnell. We rely to some extent, because it's such a good tool, on the Alliance for Retired Americans scorecard, because it's so clear. So there's a scorecard on senior issues, as you know. Right. And Mitch McConnell's rating in the 113th Congress is a great big 0.
Right. It reminds me...
0, literally 0.
It reminds me of the line from the movie The Producers, where the jury foreman says, "We find the defendants incredibly guilty."
And here's what it reminds me of, which is totally related, and what I use, is that this reminds me of the song I sang in the movie Grease, when Danny Zuko, John Travolta, and Cha-Cha DiGregorio are getting down at the high school hop, and I'm the guy saying, "How low can you go?" Say it with me. How low can you go? The whole audience goes, "How low can you go? How low can you go?" Mitch, we have found how low you can go. You cannot go lower than 0.
He has made it. And we will continue this conversation with John Bowzer Bauman after this break. I'm Richard RJ Eskow. We'll be right back. This is The Zero Hour. And we are back on the Zero Hour. With us is John Bauman, political activist who you may also know as Bowzer from Sha-Na-Na. And he's been telling us about the many races he's participated in. So what do you think? What's the energy? We were just talking about Kentucky and Mr. Mitch McConnell, the lowest of the low. First of all, I got to tell you, it would delight me no end to see the leader of the Senate Republicans go down in defeat. But what's the energy out there in Kentucky? You got a sense for how this one's going to go, or is it, as the pollsters keep saying, too close to call?
Every Grimes event that I did, and just the ones with Allison and me, the energy was fantastic. A lot of people showed up. Really good feeling. And then when Clinton came in the next day, and we went to 2 of them, Owensboro and Paducah, the energy was through the roof. Really, I don't know. That's a sleeper race. You know, it's. I think most people would still be surprised if Mitch McConnell got unseated, but there really is that possibility. And I think there are a lot of close races out there. The bottom line is, and I should mention I'm doing this on behalf of an organization I co-founded called Senior Votes Count, which is why we're doing all these endorsements over the country and how I'm able to get into every campaign and do, some significant events. Bottom line is there are an awful lot of close races that could go either way. It's a turnout battle in the end result, as it always is, but, our side often thinks that it can win if it's close enough with a better ground game. So, we're entering into get out the vote at this point, exclusively, and hopefully the better ground game will put some candidates who are good on senior issues over the top.
And, when we talk about turnout in elections, especially off-year elections like this one, the issue is turnout, but the issue is also senior voters who tend to turn out disproportionately. So I was very interested in the group you're starting with our friend, or have started with our mutual friend Ernie Powell.
Yes.
Senior Votes Count. I think it's a great idea because they certainly do count, very, very much so. And senior perception of the issues counts enormously. If we look at the way seniors view the different parties on Social Security issues, for example. So you've been out there getting the message across. Iowa is an interesting race. It certainly would be pleasant to see Joni Ernst not visit the Senate and to have another senator in there from Iowa, like his predecessor, who supports expansion to Social Security. What are the other races you've been really involved in here, and how do you think they're going?
We've endorsed in about 22 House races and about 6 or 7 Senate races, and then about 6 or 7 gubernatorial races as well. So, and we've been in all the tougher races. There are some good House pickup opportunities. There are some endangered incumbents. On balance, I feel like the House is going to shift a little bit in one direction or another. Nothing major is really going to happen. Everybody's eyes are on the Senate.
Sure.
Because of the possibility of a real change in the balance of power. And again, there are so many races out there that are within the margin of error somewhere. What do I really think? I feel like, Kay Hagan's probably doing okay. Jeanne Shaheen's probably doing okay, but these are not gimmies.
Right.
Grimes, I think, has a real puncher's chance in Kentucky. Iowa is too close to call, without a doubt. And that's where a big fight is. Colorado, we didn't actually go to. It's one of the few we didn't actually go to. It's been fought a little bit less on senior issues, for better or worse. One thing about seniors, as you said, seniors vote. They show up in the on years, they show up in the off years. They don't always vote in their own best interest, which is one thing that Senior Votes Count tries to work on, is educating seniors on what senior issues really are about and what is really good for them and what's good, for that matter, for their children and their grandchildren. But, our mission is to elect leaders who will protect and, as you say, Richard, advance the quality of life for older Americans. There are a bunch of organizations that work on policy, as you know, and that are actually prohibited from working on elections. We're working on elections, and we also have a policy arm, but, our main purpose is to get people elected who are going to be good on the issues that we care about.
And I think the other piece of it, we're talking with John Bauman, Bowzer from Sha-Na-Na, and political activist. I think the other piece of it is that I have this this image I use. It's offended people at times, but, that some politicians, and I don't mean it as negatively as it sounds, but they're kind of like one-celled animals. It's a stimulus response thing. If they learn that being right on a given issue brings rewards in terms of votes, in terms of acknowledgement, in terms of recognition, in terms of donations, whatever, they will gravitate towards that. So I think you guys are engaged in a little behavioral mod here in a You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And, I begin every presentation with the notion that you know me for my love of the wonderful music of the 50s and the early 60s, but that does not mean that I want to return to to a time before Medicare, when 35% of American seniors lived in poverty. And I certainly don't want to return to a time before Social Security, when over 50% of American seniors lived below the poverty line. And believe it or not, most of the people out there listening have no idea that those numbers are accurate.
Right. Right. No, you're absolutely...
I'm sorry, but I was going to say, much as, by the way, they also have no idea that millionaires and billionaires do not pay the same rate into Social Security as they do.
Right, and that's a huge piece. And you're absolutely right. And we know from polling, you and I both know, that when people are told that, they really say, that's got to change. That's not right. So the fact that you've got...
79%, as you know, 79%,
right.
Our mutual friend Alex Lawson and Social Security Works did nationwide polls, and it doesn't change much, by the way. They did state by state, doesn't change much in red states. Very similar. 79% of respondents answered by saying that they thought Social Security should be expanded, and that benefits should be expanded, and that millionaires and billionaires should pay the same rate as they do.
Absolutely. And by the way, you mentioned that seniors don't always vote in their self-interest. The other piece of this that I think is so important, I've talked to Ernie about it, I don't know if you and I have talked about it, but the other thing is that, yes, seniors do vote in the interests of their children and grandchildren as well. But you know what? All the plans that have been out there to cut Social Security would hurt their children and grandchildren a lot more than it would hurt today's seniors. And it's important for them to understand that. And the plans to expand Social Security would benefit everyone. So of all generations. So I think when people understand that, I know that's part of the message you're out there giving, then they realize it's in their best interest, it's in their children's best interest as well, right?
And no one wants to throw their children and their grandchildren under the bus. It's very interesting when you talk to seniors all the time. You're absolutely right about that. This is, it's not just about them, it's about their kids and their grandkids. And another thing that comes up very frequently is, seniors will say, you'll talk about Social Security and Medicare, and somebody will raise their hand and say, but what about education? Right. Seniors really care about the planet that they're going to leave to their kids and their grandkids. And in a much more comprehensive fashion than anyone gives them credit for. And, it's really a pleasure to see. And it's the way I feel. I just had my first grandchild.
Congratulations.
She's about a month old. And, when we reach this age, I'm 67, a lot of our concern, it's one reason that I'm going out there pounding the pavement nationwide, is, what kind of planet are we leaving? And this is all a big part of it.
Yeah, you want to know you did everything you could. And listen, there's so much more I wanted to talk to you about. I know you're doing some things on behalf of musicians. We both, I've spent my time around music. I love talking to you about that too, but we're running out of time. So I just want to close by saying, how can people find out more about what you guys are doing with Senior Votes Count?
www.seniorvotescount.com. And you'll see a little travelogue of most of the places that I've been. When I get a chance to send it to my other partner, Tony Fazio, who updates the website. So we're usually a little bit behind because I'm not even sure where I am. But that's the way to do it. Go to our website, and I think it would be appropriate to say, most of the places I go across the country, I end with a little song saying "Vote for so and so," but for the 0 hour here, I would say bum 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 dang 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 ding dong ding. I love Social Security.
We can't top that, so we'll end it there. Our guest has been John Bauman, Bowzer from Sha-Na-Na. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Richard. Thanks for everything that you do. And everybody, keep listening to the 0 hour. This is one of the best authorities on senior issues in the world.
Oh, well, thank you, sir.
You are.
I'm Richard RJ Eskow. We will be right back after this. This is the 0 hour.